It started like any other story of rising fame, a group of four small-town kids with big dreams, a lot of talent, and a sound that was beginning to make serious waves. The year was 1981. Reagan had just taken office, MTV hadn't launched yet, and rock music was in its golden era. These four friends from a sleepy town in Oregon had somehow cracked into the national scene, calling themselves Everfall, a name now nearly forgotten, but not by everyone. Their music had the kind of raw energy and lyrical honesty that made people pay attention. They weren't just another garage band trying to make it. These kids were the real deal. At just 21, lead singer and guitarist Tyler James had the kind of voice that felt like it had lived 100 lives. On drums was his younger brother Micah, just 19, a quiet, intense presence. Bassist Logan Tate was the comic relief of the group, always smiling, always keeping things light. And finally, there was Jessie Moon, the keyboardist and only girl in the band, tough, talented, and a kind of mystery to everyone who met her. They had just wrapped up a wild summer tour opening for a bigger name band and were on their way to sign what could have been the biggest record deal of their career. But they never made it. On September 3, 1981, Everfall boarded a private jet after playing a packed show in San Diego. The jet was supposed to take them to a meeting in Los Angeles, just a 45-minute flight. But somewhere over the Pacific, they vanished. No distress call. No wreckage. Just gone. The plane disappeared from radar around 11:42 p.m., somewhere west of Catalina Island. For weeks, the Coast Guard and Navy scoured the ocean, dragging sonar equipment, searching by air and by sea. Nothing. No oil slick. No debris. No bodies. No sign of the plane. It was like the ocean had swallowed them whole. The disappearance made headlines for a few days, rising rock stars lost at sea, but as time passed and no evidence was found, the world moved on. Fame is a strange thing. When you're hot, people can't get enough of you. But when you disappear, the silence can be deafening. A few tribute concerts happened, a memorial was built in their hometown, and then, like a fading guitar riff, Everfall became just another name in the long, tragic list of young artists lost too soon. Conspiracy theories came and went. Some said it was a crash. Others believed it was sabotage. A few fringe voices even claimed the band faked their own deaths to escape fame and live off the grid. But nothing stuck. And after a while, no one expected answers. Then, almost 2 decades later, everything changed. In June of the year 2000, a routine deep-sea training mission by a Navy salvage unit off the California coast took an unexpected turn. They were testing new sonar equipment designed to map the ocean floor when the data suddenly revealed an unusual shape, half buried under sediment more than 1,000 feet below the surface. At first, they assumed it was some kind of cargo container or shipwreck. But as the images became clearer, it was unmistakable. An aircraft. A private jet. Its tail number still faintly visible through the corrosion and marine growth. It matched the plane that Everfall had boarded that night in 1981. The Navy didn't release this information immediately. In fact, it took months before anything about the discovery was even acknowledged publicly. What they pulled from the ocean wasn't just a wreck. It was a sealed time capsule from the night the band vanished. And what they found inside raised more questions than answers. The jet was remarkably intact, given the depth and the time it had spent underwater. Even more chilling, the cabin appeared undisturbed. The instruments, the seats, even some of the band's personal items, all still in place. But no bodies. Not a single one. Just silence. As if they had never been there at all. By the time the press got wind of the recovery, the Navy had already begun a quiet investigation. But not everything added up. The black box, when recovered, was water damaged but partially salvageable. What was on it confused the experts. The final cockpit recording didn't include any sounds of panic. No warnings. In fact, the pilot's voice was calm, steady, talking about visibility and flight patterns. Then, static. Just before the signal cuts, there's something else. Something faint. A low hum. Mechanical, but not from the plane. And something that sounded like a voice. Not from the cockpit, but from somewhere else. As word spread about the discovery, interest in Everfall exploded once again. Music historians, true crime fans, and conspiracy theorists all dove headfirst into the mystery. The band's old demos were remastered and re-released. Their one official live album hit the charts again. Fans began dissecting lyrics, wondering if the band had somehow predicted their own fate. Songs like Into the Blue and No Signal took on eerie new meanings. Jessie Moon's haunting ballad, Drift, which she wrote just a few weeks before their final show, became an anthem of unsolved tragedy. But as the public obsessed over theories, the families of the missing band members were still looking for truth. Tyler and Micah's mother, now in her 70s, gave a rare interview in which she said she never believed her sons died in that crash. "I felt them," she said. "A mother knows when her children are gone. And I never felt that." Logan Tate's sister claimed she received a postcard from an unknown location in Brazil just 3 years after the crash, signed only with the letter L. Jessie's father, a former Navy technician, began privately funding his own deep-sea searches, convinced that the wreck was only part of the story. And here's where things get even stranger. Over the next several months, more oddities surfaced. Literally. A guitar case washed ashore in Baja California. Its tags matched Everfall's tour equipment. A rusted but unmistakable keyboard stand was recovered by a fishing trawler off the coast of Ensenada. And then, in a warehouse in Long Beach, a set of undeveloped film reels from 1981 was discovered during an estate sale. One roll contained behind-the-scenes footage of the band's last performance, footage no one had ever seen before. The reel was damaged, but the frames that survived showed something odd. A figure watching the band from backstage. Not a roadie. Not a fan. Someone no one could identify. Dressed in black, never seen entering or leaving. By now, the case had moved beyond the tragic and into the inexplicable. Why did the Navy wait so long to reveal what they had found? What happened to the bodies? Why was the plane intact, almost perfectly preserved in a place where pressure and time should have torn it apart? And most haunting of all, what exactly happened during that final minute of flight? The deeper you dig, the more impossible it becomes to separate fact from theory. And yet, there's something undeniable about this story. It's not just about a lost band. It's about something bigger. Something hiding beneath the surface, literally and metaphorically. Maybe it's a government cover-up. Maybe it's a glitch in time. Or maybe, just maybe, Everfall never really left. Because as the investigation continues and new clues emerge, one thing becomes clear: the story isn't over. And what comes next might just change everything. Tyler James wasn't just a frontman. He had that rare quality that made people believe. Whether it was on stage or in a late-night diner interview, when Tyler spoke, you listened. He was known for his restless mind, always scribbling lyrics into napkins, notebooks, even hotel walls when nothing else was around. His friends said he had been acting strange in the weeks leading up to their disappearance. More serious. Distracted. Jessie once mentioned in a radio interview that Tyler had been obsessed with the ocean and kept referencing dreams he'd been having about water, about crashing, about being watched. It sounded like rockstar poetic talk at the time. But in hindsight, it's the kind of detail that fans and investigators now cling to. He even wrote a song just days before their final flight, one that was never released. Its title, scrawled in red ink on the back of a tour setlist, was "They're Still Listening." And Jessie, she was the soul of the band. Her sound was haunting and electric at the same time. On stage she was bold, but off stage she kept to herself. Friends said she kept a journal, something she rarely let anyone see, and after she vanished, it became a point of obsession. Her parents never found it. No one did. But one of their old crew members, a guy named Ben Waters, swore he saw Jessie riding in it the night of the San Diego show. He said she looked pale and distant, and when he asked her if she was okay, she smiled and said, "We're not supposed to be here this long." No one ever understood what she meant. Now people think maybe she knew something, or sensed something. Back in 1981, the music world was different. There weren't 1,000 bands popping up online every day. Getting a record deal was everything, and Everfall was right on the edge. They'd attracted the interest of a major label, Blackline Records, known for pushing big names like Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult. But there was something strange about the deal. The meeting they were flying to that night was rushed, scheduled last minute by someone new at the label. The original rep they'd been working with, a guy named Anthony Calder, suddenly dropped off the radar just a few days before. Rumors later came out that Calder had suffered a mental breakdown and disappeared. Others say he was fired, or worse. No one ever confirmed what happened to him. But the man who replaced him, a smooth-talking executive named Rafe Sinclair, was reportedly very eager to close the deal. Some of the band's team found that strange. Why push so hard for a meeting in the middle of the night? Why the rush? Sinclair was later questioned after the plane vanished, but according to files released years later under the Freedom of Information Act, he gave vague, inconsistent statements. He claimed he barely knew the band, that he had nothing to do with the meeting, and that he wasn't even in California that week. But one of the band's roadies, who spoke anonymously to a local paper, swore he saw Sinclair at the San Diego show, backstage, talking to Jesse. And not just talking, arguing. Loudly. No one knows what it was about. The mystery around the jet only deepens with time. When the Navy pulled it from the ocean in 2000, one of the first things they noticed was the cockpit door, sealed from the inside, and locked. The pressure at that depth should have crushed the doorframe, blown out windows, shredded the fuselage. But none of that happened. Inside, the plane was in better condition than anyone could explain. Clothes were still folded in duffel bags. An old Walkman with a mixtape still inside sat on one of the seats. It played, just barely, when someone tried it on a fresh battery. The last song on the tape? A scratchy version of Into the Blue, their final recorded track. Fitting and unsettling. But the creepiest thing found on the jet was an old Polaroid camera. Waterlogged but intact. Navy techs recovered 6 photos from it. Only one was usable. It shows the band, seated on the plane. Jesse is smiling faintly, Tyler staring straight into the camera. Logan is asleep. And Micah? He's pointing at something just outside the window. In the reflection, there's something. Not another plane. Not a bird. Something much harder to explain. Investigators have argued about it for years. Some say it's just glare or a tear in the image. Others believe it looks like a shape, dark, oval, almost mechanical, hovering above the clouds. The photo, still in a government archive, has never been released to the public in full resolution. Just one more secret in a file full of them. Meanwhile, down in the town of Elgin, Oregon, where the band grew up, locals still talk about Everfall like they were family. Their old garage still stands behind Tyler and Micah's childhood home. It's now boarded up and overgrown, but some say you can still hear faint music late at night. Logan's parents kept his room untouched for nearly a decade, and Jessie's childhood piano sits covered in dust in her father's living room, never played again. These aren't just people lost in a plane crash. They're memories etched into a community. But not everyone in town thinks they're gone. In 2003, a woman driving along a remote stretch of road outside Elgin claimed she saw someone who looked exactly like Jesse standing at the edge of the woods. Same build, same long dark hair, same quiet stare. When the driver turned around to get a better look, the woman was gone. Another man, a fisherman out near Point Conception, said he pulled what looked like a stage pass from the ocean. It had the words, "Everfall, access all areas," on it, dated September 2nd, 1981. The ink was faded, but legible. It had no barnacles, no corrosion. It looked almost new. People started asking if the band had really died at all, or if something else had happened, something that no one wanted to talk about. Some say it was a military test gone wrong. Others think the band stumbled onto something they were never meant to see. A secret flight route? Experimental technology? Or maybe something not even man-made. There are old stories from Catalina Island, going back decades, about lights in the sky, about fishermen hearing humming noises beneath the water, about boats vanishing without a trace. Most people ignore them, but not everyone. There's one last piece to this puzzle, a tape. Not music, not a voice recording. A reel of security footage from a hangar in San Diego, timestamped just 4 hours before the flight took off. It was found mislabeled in a government warehouse and quietly leaked online in 2006. In it, you can see the jet being prepped. You can see the band laughing, loading their gear, walking toward the plane. But the last 10 seconds of the footage shows something that's never been explained. As the band climbs the steps to board the jet, the video stutters, freezes. For a split second, the entire frame goes white. When it returns, there's one extra figure, standing just outside the plane. Not a band member, not a tech, no face visible, just a long coat, a hat, and a stance that looks like waiting. No official source has ever verified the footage, and its authenticity is debated. But those who've seen it swear it feels real. So where does that leave us? A band full of promise vanished mid-flight. A plane recovered but with no trace of the people who were inside. Scattered clues, unexplained sightings, fragments of music, and a silence that feels deliberate. This isn't just a case of missing persons. It's become something bigger, something layered in secrecy, grief, and the strange pull of the unknown. A mystery that refuses to fade. And as we dig deeper, one question keeps echoing louder than all the others. If Everfall didn't die that night, where did they go? Because somewhere, out beyond the radar, the story still isn't finished. When the footage of the unknown figure outside the jet surfaced online, it didn't just spark conversation, it ignited obsession. Message boards, late-night talk shows, and underground podcasts dove headfirst into dissecting every pixel of the clip. Some insisted it was a prank, a digitally altered fake. Others believed it was proof that something, or someone, intervened that night. A handful of aviation experts came forward quietly, speaking off the record. One former technician, who claimed to have worked at the San Diego airstrip in the early 80s, said he remembered seeing military personnel near the jet hours before takeoff. No uniforms, no names. Just men in plain black suits and unmarked vehicles. They didn't speak, he said in one podcast interview. They just watched. And when I asked who they were, I was told to mind my job. It wasn't just what happened on the ground that felt off. It was everything surrounding the flight. The plane itself was rented from a private charter company with very little paper trail. No official co-pilot was ever named. The original flight plan was never filed with the FAA, which violates standard procedure. And the jet, when pulled from the ocean, showed signs of having traveled further than its expected route, way further. One of the fuel lines was dry, but not from a crash. It looked like the fuel had been used. Experts said the plane could have flown for hours longer than intended. So where was it going? While investigators tried to piece together the flight's final moments, the families of Everfall began asking questions of their own. And they didn't always agree. Tyler and Micah's mother believed in something spiritual. She often said her sons were taken, not lost. Jesse's father leaned hard into government conspiracy, convinced the band had been caught up in something classified. But it was Logan's older brother, Drew, who took things further than anyone expected. He began privately compiling everything he could find. Navy records, press clippings, sonar logs, photographs, even fan sightings. He quit his job and started traveling, chasing down leads from Mexico to Montana. In 2005, he told a small local news station that he believed the jet didn't crash, it landed somewhere. There's a pattern, he said, and someone doesn't want it found. Drew Tate wasn't alone. By 2007, a group of amateur investigators had formed an online community called Project Drift, named after Jesse's final ballad. They mapped sightings, compared voice recordings, and even reverse-engineered the band's lyrics, looking for hidden clues. One user posted a theory that the entire last album contained a timeline. Another claimed that Jesse's handwriting in the lyric book changed in the final few pages, as if someone else had written them. What started as a tribute became a full-blown investigation, and though many dismissed them as just another fringe group, their findings were surprisingly detailed. One of their most compelling discoveries was an interview from 1980 with a pilot named Charles Knott, who had flown several of the band's earlier charter flights. In a buried magazine profile, Knott mentioned that Tyler had become fascinated with aviation, asking deep, unusual questions about black box systems, altimeters, and even signal jamming. He was interested in things most passengers never think about, Knott said. He asked about radar blind spots, about what would happen if a plane flew low enough to avoid detection. That interview was nearly forgotten until someone from Project Drift connected it to FAA radar data from the night of the crash. And sure enough, there was a brief, 10-minute window where the jet completely vanished from radar, not because it crashed, but because it dropped below altitude. So if the plane didn't go down exactly where it was thought to, where did it really disappear? Further deepening the mystery, a former Navy sonar technician came forward anonymously in 2008. In an encrypted forum post, he described a sonar recording that was captured the night of September 3, 1981, hours after the band's jet vanished. It recorded a high-pitched frequency, steady and unnatural, that seemed to bounce off something large beneath the water. The technician said the frequency was unlike anything we'd heard, mechanical, but not man-made. He claimed the recording was classified and erased from public record, but not before he made a private copy. The file was uploaded online, but removed almost instantly. Only a few people managed to save it before it vanished again. Some who heard it say the sound made them physically ill. Others said it had a pattern, a rhythm, like music almost. A few even claimed to hear voices buried under the noise. One voice, maybe two. Meanwhile, strange things began happening to people close to the case. One journalist investigating the crash had her hard drives wiped clean after a break-in with nothing stolen. A musician who claimed to be in contact with someone from the band suffered a sudden mental breakdown and disappeared. A fan who posted a video breakdown of the recovered jet was later sued by an unnamed party and forced to remove all content. Some of this might have been coincidence, but it didn't feel like it. And then, the sightings increased. In 2010, a cruise ship passenger claimed to have seen a flare shoot up from the ocean roughly 200 miles off the California coast. The ship rerouted briefly, but nothing was found. Around the same time, a local in Santa Cruz reported hearing music from the cliffs late at night, music they swore was Everfall. A college student hiking in Big Sur said she found a cassette tape buried in a rusted tin. On it, only one track, unlabeled, muffled, and warped. But underneath the static, listeners claimed they could hear Jessie's voice. She was singing something no one recognized. A new song. A sad one. Like a farewell. At the same time, theories began to emerge about a place known among naval circles as Zone Echo 9, an uncharted patch of ocean west of Catalina Island rumored to be a dead zone for radar and communications. Retired officers denied its existence, but satellite photos occasionally showed strange heat signatures or surface disturbances in that area. Theories spread that Everfall's plane might have landed there or crashed, and that something or someone had kept it hidden all these years. In 2013, a treasure diver near the Channel Islands reported finding a piece of aircraft paneling that matched the paint and shape of the Everfall jet. He posted photos, but before any news outlets could verify, the photos were taken down and the diver stopped responding to messages. A month later, his boat was found adrift and empty near San Miguel Island. No sign of the diver. No wreckage. Just his camera, left behind, with a memory card missing. As all this unfolded, one thread kept showing up, the music. Pieces of it. Hints of it. Not the old songs, but something different. Unreleased tracks, faint voices, unfinished demos. A radio host in Nevada claimed to intercept a brief signal on an abandoned AM frequency in the early hours of the morning. It was barely audible, but the host swore it was Jessie Moon's voice, whispering something that sounded like, "We're still here." Fans started gathering near the coast on the anniversary of the band's disappearance, playing their music loudly from cliffs and beaches. Some said it was a tribute. Others believed it was a way to call them back. A ritual, maybe. People brought old cassettes, guitars, candles. Some left handwritten notes addressed to the band. In one year, someone found a new note left behind. It simply said, "Not lost. Not forgotten. Just waiting." So what is the truth? Did Everfall vanish in a tragic accident, their bodies lost forever beneath the ocean? Or were they part of something stranger, something not even meant to be understood? Why did the Navy hold back the wreckage for so long? Why are pieces of the plane still surfacing in places it never should have reached? And how is it possible that the music keeps appearing, like an echo from a place no one can find? These questions don't have answers. Not yet. But the deeper you go into this story, the more it feels like something's still alive in it. Maybe the band is gone. Or maybe they're in a place the rest of us can't reach. Not anymore. Because if there's one thing everyone agrees on, it's this. Everfall wasn't just a band. They were a message. A mystery that's still playing in the background, just beneath the surface. You just have to know where to listen. And somewhere out there, maybe they're still listening too. It was the 40th anniversary of the band's disappearance when everything shifted. For years, fans had quietly gathered near the rocky shores of Central California, playing Everfall's music, leaving candles and notes, just like they always did. But that year felt different. The air was heavier. A fog rolled in from the sea and never lifted, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. A podcast that had been following the case for nearly a decade, Signal Drift, released a special episode with a clip that sent shockwaves through the fanbase. It was grainy, crackling with static, but unmistakable, a woman's voice humming. Then the faint sound of guitar chords. And finally, a whisper, "We never landed." The voice matched old vocal recordings of Jesse Moon. The podcast wouldn't say how they got the tape, just that it was mailed to them, in an unmarked envelope, postmarked from a small town in Alaska. No return address. The only thing included besides the tape was a black and white photo. It showed a beach, long and empty, with a single figure in the distance walking toward the water. Zoomed in, the figure looked strangely familiar. Hair like Jesse's. The way she walked, the way her shoulders curved forward. The podcast's host said it gave him chills the moment he saw it, and even more when he realized what beach it was. He matched it to a remote strip of shoreline near Kodiak Island. A place not marked on most maps. A place with almost no human presence. The coordinates, buried in the tape's audio data, led right there. That was when Drew Tate came out of hiding. He hadn't spoken publicly in nearly 6 years. Most thought he'd given up. But in a live stream that would later be pulled from every major platform, Drew appeared in a dimly lit room with walls covered in photos, maps, red thread pinned between key points. He looked tired, hollow-eyed, but determined. He said he'd been following something bigger than any of them knew. A pattern. Dates, locations, unexplained signals. He believed the band had been trying to send messages back ever since the night of the disappearance. But not from somewhere on Earth. From somewhere off it. He held up a notebook. Inside were sketches, coordinates, fragments of song lyrics, and strange mathematical patterns that he said were pulled from the band's unreleased demos. He believed these patterns matched acoustic signals used by submarines to communicate silently through deep water. He also claimed the guitar riff from Into the Blue matched the frequency of a sonar ping found by the Navy near Zone Echo 9 in 1994. People thought he was losing his mind, until he played a tape. It was an old cassette, beat up, faded. On it was a new song, one no one had heard before. It didn't sound like a demo or a studio track. It was raw, echoing, as if recorded in a massive, hollow space. Jessie's voice was clear. She was singing words that no one could fully make out. But the pain in her voice, the urgency, it didn't feel like performance. It felt like a cry. At the end of the track, there was a voice. Tyler's voice. Faint, almost drowned by static. He said 3 words. "They're not done." Within a week, Drew was gone again. Vanished. His live stream disappeared. His accounts were wiped. Emails bounced back. A few people claimed to spot him boarding a cargo ship in Seattle. Others said they saw him in Iceland. But no one knew for sure. All that remained was the song and the growing feeling that the band's story wasn't over. Then came the Catalina incident. A privately owned drone, part of an amateur ocean survey project, captured footage of something just beneath the waves off the coast of Santa Catalina Island. The clip was only 14 seconds long, but it showed the outline of a large metallic object, resting about 300 feet below the surface. It wasn't a ship. Too round. Too symmetrical. Experts who analyzed the footage said it looked like a disc, partially buried in the sand. A few claimed the object matched the dimensions of a modified aircraft fuselage. And in the top right corner of the screen, barely visible in the fading light, was what appeared to be a tail number. N4475C. That number matched the jet Everfall had boarded in 1981. But the plane had already been recovered 500 miles north, years earlier. The footage was immediately taken down. The survey group denied ever posting it. Their equipment was reportedly confiscated by a federal agency that refused to name itself. The lead technician on the project left a voicemail for his cousin, which later leaked. He said, "We weren't supposed to see that. It's not just the plane, man. It's something else. They didn't crash. They went through something." Theories exploded. A wormhole. A secret underwater base. A break in space-time. Some believed the band had passed into a different reality entirely, one where time moved differently, where minutes here were years there. Others thought they were being held, studied, maybe even used. The one thing no one could argue anymore was that something had happened far beyond a normal crash. Then, a seismic event struck off the coast. Small, shallow, and strange. Not an earthquake. It was picked up by underwater sensors, and the data suggested it wasn't natural. It was rhythmic, like pulses. Beats. As if the ocean floor itself was sending out a signal. Within days of that event, 3 different shortwave radio operators from different parts of the country reported intercepting an identical signal. A sequence of tones. Short bursts followed by silence. Then a phrase, repeated 3 times, track 17. They know. Track 17 didn't exist on any official Everfall release. But deep in a vault owned by Blackline Records was an unreleased test pressing of the band's original album, before it was cut for public release. That pressing had 17 tracks. The final one was never titled. It was just an instrumental. No lyrics. Just atmospheric sound. Whispers. Echoes. When that track was played back on high-end studio equipment, something odd happened. At a certain frequency, it began to reveal a pattern, almost like Morse code. When translated, it spelled out one sentence, follow the hum. Fans began to speculate that the band had left a trail, breadcrumbs, hidden in music and static. A trail that led somewhere out at sea. But no one knew exactly where. Until someone remembered the old sonar map shared by Project Drift. A location marked in red, circled again and again by Drew Tate in his notebook. A place just beyond the border of Zone Echo 9. A patch of ocean known for ship malfunctions, equipment failures, and strange light patterns beneath the surface. The community rallied. A crowdfunding campaign was launched to fund a private expedition. A boat. Equipment. Divers. The plan was to go out there, to where the signals had originated. To follow the hum. A handful of people signed on. Some were fans, some scientists, some skeptics. But they all had one thing in common. They wanted the truth. The night before they left, a new message appeared in the Signal Drift forum. An anonymous user. No name. No avatar. Just a line of text. If you hear it, don't answer. The post was deleted within minutes. The account no longer existed. But the words stuck. The boat, named Echo 1, left port quietly under foggy skies. No press. No fanfare. Just a handful of people and a deep sense that something big was coming. For 2 days, the ocean was calm. Equipment picked up strange blips, nothing definite. But then, just before sunrise on the 3rd day, they heard it. A low hum. Distant at first, like a memory you almost forgot. Then louder. More structured. Musical. It rose in pitch, then fell again. Like breathing. Like singing. Divers went in. And what they saw below would never be fully explained. The outline of something massive. Round. Mechanical, but not familiar. And next to it, another shape. Long metallic. Wings spread like they were frozen mid-flight. A jet. Covered in sea life, but unmistakable. And just before their cameras cut out, before everything went dark, one diver said he saw lights. Not reflections. Not man-made. Lights from inside the fuselage. Moving. Blinking. Then the feed ended. The surface crew called for backup, but before help could arrive, the Echo 1 began to drift. All instruments dead. Radios silent. Power lost. The last thing recorded in the ship's black box was a faint voice over the sonar mic. It whispered, track 17. Still playing. And in that moment, the ocean went still. Something had answered. But what had it heard? And who or what was finally coming back? When the Echo 1 finally drifted back into port, 3 days late and nearly silent, something about the ship felt wrong. The crew that had left so full of purpose now looked hollow, shaken. Not all of them returned. 2 divers were missing, presumed lost during that final descent, but the official report stated only equipment failure and unfavorable conditions. The captain barely spoke. And the black box, the one that caught the final whisper about track 17, had been wiped clean. All data gone. All backups corrupted. Almost like someone, or something, didn't want the evidence to survive. But one thing did survive. A diver's body camera, water damage but partially recoverable, was salvaged from a duffel bag that somehow appeared on deck after the chaos. No one remembered bringing it up. No one remembered seeing it until the ship neared the harbor. It had no markings. Just a small note taped to the top. You need to see it. The footage was shaky. It showed the descent into the deep, the thickening black of the ocean closing in. Then shapes began to emerge. The jet, still intact, settled on the seafloor like a sleeping ghost. And beside it, the other object, a circular structure, massive and unnatural. Not rusted, not aged. Smooth metal, almost shimmering in the light. And as the divers got closer, a low-frequency hum grew louder. The camera shook. Lights on the structure pulsed, first blue, then white, then a deep, almost painful red. One diver pointed toward the jet's cockpit. There was a flicker of movement inside. A face. And then, static. The footage cut out. What followed next was the kind of chaos no one could contain. A week after the Echo 1 returned, the lead investigator on the case, a marine biologist named Avery Kent, was reported missing. She had spoken openly about the discovery and had even promised to go public with all the data. She never got the chance. Her car was found on the edge of a coastal cliff, door open, engine still running. Inside the car was a thumb drive, completely erased. On the dashboard, a crumpled note in her handwriting read, "They aren't dead, but they aren't them anymore." That was when everything shifted from mystery into something darker. Reports started trickling in from coastal towns all along the Pacific. Strange signals heard over radios in the middle of the night, sometimes in the middle of conversations. People claimed to hear faint guitar riffs followed by whispers. Always whispers. Some reported dreams, vivid and disturbing, where the band members appeared, but with eyes that didn't quite look human. Others described being pulled toward the ocean in sleepwalking trances, waking up on beaches miles from home with sand in their pockets and no memory of how they got there. One retired Navy sonar tech, who'd tracked the original blip that led to Zone Echo 9 decades earlier, came forward anonymously in an underground broadcast. His voice was digitally altered, his location kept secret. But what he said sent chills across the community. The signals started before the plane vanished. Years before. We thought they were natural anomalies. They weren't. They were a response. A response to what? The interviewer asked. To a transmission we sent. One that was never meant to go out. The sonar tech didn't say what that transmission contained, but he implied it reached something deep beneath the Pacific, and that whatever was down there, it had been listening, watching, waiting. And whenever Fall's plane flew into that sector in 1981, it wasn't a crash. It was an interception. The idea that the band had been taken was nothing new. Fans had whispered about it for years. But this was different. The suggestion now was that the jet had made contact with something, and that the band hadn't just survived, they had changed, been changed, altered by their time away. Whatever message they were trying to send back, through frequencies, through unreleased tracks, through static, it wasn't just to say they were alive. It was to warn us. The forum known as Project Drift exploded with theories. A few believed the band had entered a different dimension. Others argued it was biological, that some kind of deep-sea organism had infected the plane. But one theory rose above the rest. It was simple, terrifying, and it fit every unexplained event since the wreckage was found. They never left. What if the band never came back because they were never allowed to? What if what was pulled from the ocean wasn't just a jet, but a carrier? A vessel holding something inside. Something that was still active, still aware. That's when the second signal hit. A burst transmission captured by amateur radio operators in Oregon and Washington simultaneously lasted only 19 seconds. It was coded, but after it was cracked, the message read, "They opened it. 4475C is active. Track 17 incomplete." The implications hit like a shockwave. Not only had the submerged fuselage been compromised, but whatever system inside it, if it was a system, was not fully powered before. Now it was. The jet wasn't just a relic. It was part of something bigger, something living or controlled. And Track 17, once thought to be just a symbolic clue, might actually be a real mechanism. A trigger, a broadcast, a final piece of communication that hadn't been finished. That's when things escalated fast. Several members of the Echo 1 expedition were detained by federal agents within 48 hours. Their homes were searched, their devices seized. One of them, a sonar specialist, was said to have been hospitalized with acute auditory trauma, claiming he could still hear the hum even when completely deafened with medical-grade noise blockers. He scribbled on paper for hours, drawing the same symbols over and over. Circles within circles. Waves. And always, a name written across the top, Jesse Moon. At the same time, another twist came from an unexpected place, a sound engineer in Los Angeles who had worked on the band's early demo tapes. He reached out to a local radio station with a cassette he said he'd forgotten he even had. It was labeled JM Final, dated just 3 weeks before the flight. The track was raw, unfinished, but chilling. Jesse's voice, fragile but clear, whispered, "Not everyone will hear this. Not everyone should. But if you're listening, they are not from where we are. And they do not forget." Then came the hum again. That deep, pulsing sound. And what followed was not music, but a rapid clicking, like code, before the tape dissolved into screeching static. After that broadcast, dozens of listeners reported getting headaches. A few claimed to black out briefly. Several even said they heard voices through their car speakers later that night, even with the radio off. All claimed the same thing. The voices sounded familiar. They sounded like the band. By now, mainstream media had caught wind of the story again, but every time someone tried to publish a detailed article, it was either taken down or mysteriously edited within hours. Links went dead. Video segments got pulled from YouTube. Even digital archives from 1981 were altered, with pages missing or scrambled. One archivist in San Francisco discovered that nearly every document referencing Everfall's flight had been tagged with classified and metadata, something not standard for music groups or private aviation records. People weren't just looking for the truth anymore. They were racing against something. The final clue came from an unlikely place, a small community radio station near Bodega Bay. They aired a show late at night, mostly static and forgotten folk songs, until a mysterious vinyl was dropped off at their studio. No label, no case, just a handwritten message, play only once. When the DJ spun it live, listeners reported the usual hum, but this time, layered beneath it, was a chilling harmony. 4 voices, each fading in and out, whispering, humming, mourning. And at the very end, clear as day, Jesse's voice sang one line. "We gave them the music, but they wanted us." And then the station went off air. No one's been able to trace the source of that record. The DJ never returned to work. The studio is locked, lights still on. And somewhere, deep in the Pacific, something pulses, still alive, still listening. The band may have vanished, but the signal? It's only getting stronger. As the final pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, a sense of urgency gripped those still seeking the truth behind Everfall's disappearance. The mysterious signals, the haunting messages, and the inexplicable phenomena all pointed to a climax that would either bring closure or unleash something far more sinister. Avery Kent, the marine biologist who had vanished after the Echo 1 expedition, was found alive but disoriented on a remote beach in Oregon. She had no recollection of how she got there, but clutched in her hand was a waterproof case containing a single cassette tape labeled Track 17, Final Mix. The tape was rushed to a secure facility for analysis. When played, the tape revealed a haunting melody interwoven with layers of static and faint whispers. As the track progressed, the whispers grew louder, forming coherent sentences that seemed to be a direct message from Jesse Moon. He spoke of an entity beneath the ocean, a consciousness that had been awakened by their music, and a warning that humanity was not alone. Simultaneously, seismic activity was detected near the original crash site, now referred to as Zone Echo 9. A massive structure, previously hidden beneath layers of sediment, began to emerge from the ocean floor. Resembling a colossal metallic disc, it pulsed with an eerie light and emitted low-frequency sounds that interfered with communication systems worldwide. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying naval fleets and scientific teams to investigate. However, any attempt to approach the structure resulted in equipment failure and disorientation among personnel. It became clear that the entity was not only sentient but also protective of its domain. In a desperate bid to communicate, the recovered Track 17 was broadcasted towards the structure using specialized underwater speakers. The response was immediate. The pulsing lights intensified, and a beam of light shot into the sky, visible for miles. Suddenly, the structure began to rise, revealing an intricate network of tunnels and chambers beneath. Inside, the remains of Everfall's jet were discovered, perfectly preserved. More astonishingly, the band members were found in a state of suspended animation, their bodies untouched by time. As the team attempted to extract them, the entity communicated directly through the minds of those present, conveying a message of caution. The entity revealed that it had been monitoring Earth for centuries, drawn to the unique frequencies of human emotion expressed through music. Everfall's final track had resonated so profoundly that it triggered an awakening. The entity had preserved the band, hoping to understand the depth of human creativity and emotion. Faced with the choice of retrieving the band or leaving them under the entity's care, the decision was made to respect the entity's wishes. In return, the entity agreed to cease its interference with Earth's systems and retreated beneath the ocean once more, taking the band with it. As the world grappled with the implications of this encounter, a final transmission was received. It was Jesse Moon's voice, clear and resolute, stating, "We are safe. Our music lives on. Remember us." The message served as both a farewell and a reminder of the power of human expression. In the aftermath, the mystery of Everfall became a symbol of unity and the uncharted depths of human potential. Their music experienced a resurgence, inspiring a new generation to explore the unknown and to create with passion and purpose. Yet, in the quiet moments, some still reported hearing faint melodies carried by the wind, as if the band continued to play from beneath the waves, their legacy echoing through time. In the days following the entity's retreat beneath the waves, a quiet settled over the world. The mysterious signals ceased, and the ocean returned to its usual rhythm. Scientists and governments, once frantic in their investigations, found themselves at a loss for further action. The band Everfall remained a poignant memory, their final message echoing in the minds of those who had heard it. "We are safe. Our music lives on. Remember us." Avery Kent, now recovered and coherent, took it upon herself to compile all the data, recordings, and testimonies into a comprehensive report. She emphasized the significance of the entity's interest in human emotion and creativity, particularly as expressed through music. Her findings suggested that the entity's awakening was not an act of aggression but a response to a profound connection it felt with Everfall's music. The world, having come so close to an unfathomable encounter, began to reflect on the power of art and expression. Everfall's music experienced a resurgence, with old albums climbing the charts and new artists citing the band as a major influence. Tribute concerts were held, and a foundation was established in the band's name to support emerging musicians. Yet, amidst the global reflection and renewed appreciation for music, a final, unexpected twist emerged. A young boy in a coastal village reported hearing a melody in his dreams, one he had never heard before. When he hummed it to his parents, they recognized it as a new composition, unlike any of Everfall's known tracks. Similar reports began to surface worldwide, people dreaming of unfamiliar yet beautiful melodies, all bearing the unmistakable essence of Everfall's style. Speculation grew. Could the band be composing from their place beneath the ocean, their music transcending physical boundaries to reach the world once more? Or had the entity, moved by its connection to human creativity, taken it upon itself to continue Everfall's legacy? While definitive answers remained elusive, one thing was certain: Everfall's music, born of human emotion and amplified by an extraordinary encounter, had become a bridge between worlds. Their legacy endured, not just in records and memories, but in the very fabric of human consciousness, inspiring generations to come. And so, the story of Everfall concluded not with an end, but with a new beginning, a testament to the enduring power of music and the boundless possibilities that arise when humanity dares to express its soul.